This is my oral presentation companion piece to my research paper on the impact of pesticides on bees. There's more than one impact on bees other than just being generally harmful and able to kill them outright. There's a lot of things that there's a myriad of other issues that at play that reduce their proficiency and ultimately lead to reduced bee populations over the years, going back decades. So we use all senses in our lives, some more than others. I think sight is very important to us humans as a species, but bees have much smaller eyes. They can't see nearly as far or as they can't see in nearly as high definition as we can, so they rely mostly on their olfactory senses. They use their olfactory senses to find out where flowers are, but also to communicate with other bees. Pheromones are a very important part of their communication with one another. So, for example, bee larvae use pheromones to let nurse bees know that they're hungry and that they need food. And bees use pheromones to alert other bees that they're in danger or they're under attack. Like if a wasp enters the hive, they will send out pheromones to let others know that they need help. And so what pesticides do is they mess with they'll mess with the responses that bees will give to certain pheromones. So if bees can't respond properly to certain pheromones, then they can be less safe, or it'll be harder for them to raise, bees for the next generation. And in general, they'll just be less proficient. And I'm going to be talking about ground nesting bees now. There's a different type of bee. These are their burrows on the left. They typically burrow in dry soil in sunny areas, and they don't have a queen, but they operate pretty much. They operate similarly. And how pesticides affect ground nesting bees is that they will increase the size of female bees and decrease the size of male bees. Now, this isn't really an issue, but what will happen is that males will live twice as long as females, and females will live half as long as males. And this is a problem because if one male can breed with multiple female bees, but it's not advantageous to have lots of males ready to breed, but only a couple of females. You'll start seeing less and less generations over time because you have less opportunities to breed, and this is not good for their populations. So we have internal clocks. When it's dark, we typically get tired unless you've pulled an all-nighter and you kind of make your internal clock out of whack. And bees have internal clocks too. And pesticides will alter their internal clock. And the reason that this is bad is because since bees' eyesight are so bad, they need to orient themselves with something to figure out where the hive is when they travel out long distances to find flowers or plants to pollinate with. So they orient themselves with the sun because it's just such a bright light source. It's like their North Star, think of it, so that they can find their way home. But if it's nighttime and your internal clock is out of order and you feel like going out to pollinate at night, well, good luck trying to find your way back to your hive. You're not going to be as efficient as you were if you were pollinating in the daytime. And anyone who's worked long hours or went to school tired knows that you do not perform nearly as well with less sleep, and pesticides make bees harder. It gives bees a harder time to get a good night's sleep and perform well for their colony, for the good of their colony. And like I said in the beginning, pesticides can just be toxic enough to bees to outright kill them. And this isn't as bad if you just come into direct contact and that's it. But what will happen is on the picture on the left, the bee is, as you can see, it's picking up a lot of pollen and it's sticking to their body. Well, pesticides do this too. They coat their bodies in pesticides on accident. And what will happen is when they fly back to their hive, along with dragging all their pollen in, they will drag their pesticides in. Let's say it absorbs into the wax of the walls that are containing larvae for new bees. Well, those baby bees are going to be contaminated with pesticides too. And if a few worker bees die, it's not a big deal because your queen can just make more eggs, right? But since you have all these worker bees that are potentially dragging pesticides into the hive, well, now your queen bee is constantly coming into contact with bees that have pesticides on them, and they're constantly rubbing off on the queen. And if your queen dies and you can't find a new queen quick enough, well, your colony is just going to slowly start dying off. And that's what a lot of beekeepers are having problems with. Their queens are living not nearly as long as they would have liked, and they have to find new ones. And this is the worst part, is that the queens are coming into contact with so much pesticides secondhand by workers. But there are solutions. One solution is by bolstering bees' immune systems. We take probiotics during flu season to protect from colds and stuff like that. Well, this could happen with bees too. And this on the left is called a pollen patty. It contains vitamins, lemon juice, yeast, pollen, sugar, dried egg, honey, and oil. It's like a food supplement for beekeepers that have bee colonies that don't have anything to pollinate with in areas with not as many flowers or plants like that. But what farmers can start doing is laying out protein patties laced with probiotics by their bee colonies, so that they can be proactive and bolster their bee populations against pesticides when they have to spray down their fields. Because you can't just stop using pesticides. Our agriculture industry relies on all this food, and we can't just stop using pesticides. So this is one way to do it, and there's many more ways that we can do this, but this is one of the ideas that I found and I used in my research paper. And this is an important issue because, like I said, bees they're essential for the agriculture industry to pollinate many of our crops, and they're a keystone species that hold up a lot of food chains across the globe, and that's why the impact that pesticides have on bees is so important, and why we should be paying so much attention to this. And that's the impact of pesticides on bees. Thank you.